You might be carrying a quiet thought today, a feeling that sits just beneath the surface, that somehow you're behind in your career, behind in your relationships, behind in becoming the person you thought you'd be by now. Maybe you scroll through updates and milestones and feel a subtle tightening in your chest. Maybe there's a quiet pressure that follows you through the day, a sense that time is moving and you're not moving fast enough. And even when you try to rest, a voice whispers that you should be doing more. If that feels familiar, you're not alone. Many people carry this silent weight, especially in a world that constantly measures progress in visible ways. It can start to feel like life is a race you didn't realize you were running, and somehow you're losing. But before anything else, take a slow breath, because there's something important to understand. You didn't fall behind. You were surviving. There's a difference, and it matters more than you might think. You see, when life becomes overwhelming, the nervous system shifts into protection mode. It narrows focus. It conserves energy. It prioritizes getting through the day over long-term planning. This isn't laziness. It isn't lack of ambition. It's biology doing what it's designed to do. When stress piles up, uncertainty, emotional strain, pressure to perform, the brain quietly moves resources towards safety, not toward optimization. So if there were seasons where you felt foggy, or stuck, or unable to move forward the way you expected, that wasn't a personal failure. That was your system trying to keep you afloat. And often this happens so quietly that you don't even notice it. You just feel tired, or numb, or disconnected from your usual sense of direction. Sometimes you might look back and wonder why certain things took longer, why motivation disappeared, why decisions felt heavy. But survival mode rarely announces itself. It simply adjusts the pace. It asks less of you because it knows you have less to give. And yet, in a culture that celebrates constant momentum, slowing down can feel like falling behind. So you start to judge yourself. You compare timelines. You replay decisions. You carry a quiet guilt for not being further along. But what if the timeline you're measuring yourself against never accounted for what you were carrying? What if it didn't include the emotional labor, the invisible stress, the quiet resilience required just to keep going? When you look at it that way, something shifts. You begin to see that your path wasn't delayed. It was shaped by reality. And there's a kind of dignity in that, because surviving isn't passive. It requires strength, adaptation, endurance, even when it doesn't look impressive from the outside. Sometimes survival looks like showing up when you're exhausted. Sometimes it looks like pausing instead of pushing. Sometimes it looks like simply getting through the day without collapsing under the weight of everything you're holding. And that deserves acknowledgement, not criticism. When shame softens, space opens. And in that space, clarity can return. Not all at once, but gradually, like fog lifting in the morning. You might notice small moments of curiosity again, a flicker of interest, a sense that possibilities exist beyond immediate pressure. This is often how movement begins, not through force, but through safety. When the nervous system feels less threatened, energy naturally frees up. Thinking becomes clearer. Choices feel less overwhelming. You don't have to push yourself into this. It unfolds when the internal environment allows it. And this is why understanding your experience matters. Because when you stop interpreting slow periods as personal flaws, you reduce the internal tension that keeps you stuck. You give yourself permission to exist without constant evaluation. You begin to relate to your life with more patience. And patience changes the texture of time. It turns urgency into presence. It allows you to notice what's actually happening instead of constantly scanning for what's missing. You may start to see that progress isn't always visible. Sometimes it's internal, a shift in how you speak to yourself, a gentler response to setbacks, a growing ability to pause instead of panic. These are forms of movement, even if they don't show up on a resume or timeline. And slowly, a different narrative becomes possible. Not I'm late, but I moved at the pace my life required. Not I wasted time, but I protected myself when things were heavy. There's a quiet strength in recognizing this, because it restores something essential: trust. Trust that you can listen inwardly. Trust that your pace has intelligence. Trust that you don't have to force your life into someone else's rhythm. And when trust returns, motivation feels different. It's not driven by fear of falling behind. It's guided by curiosity, by values, by a sense of choice. You may notice that the future feels less like a looming deadline and more like open space, a space where you can move thoughtfully, where growth doesn't require urgency, where you're allowed to take one step, then breathe. It's okay if things are still unclear. Clarity often follows kindness, not pressure. And even now, simply recognizing that you are surviving, not failing, can soften something inside. You don't have to rewrite your entire story tonight. Just letting go of the idea that you're behind can be enough. Because life isn't a single track with fixed checkpoints. It's a landscape. Sometimes you move quickly. Sometimes you rest. Sometimes you wander without knowing exactly why. All of it belongs. And wherever you are right now is a valid place to stand. There is still time. There is still room. You are not late to your own life. You are living it the only way you could. And from here, you can move forward gently. Not because you're catching up, but because you're ready. Take a breath. Nothing is chasing you. You're allowed to be exactly where you are.